So just to kind of give you a 30,000-foot preview, looking forward into the rest of the Old Testament, some of the prophets that are going to show up that are predominantly serving among the 10 tribes up north. Now, there are occasional times where they'll interact with the king and some of the people down south as well, and vice versa. But largely, your most famous prophets that you are most familiar with up north would be Elijah and Elisha. And we're going to tell Elijah's story today. That's the majority of the rest of this lesson is Elijah's dealings with people who are really struggling up north. Down south in Judah, some of the prophets that you're most familiar with would be Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Jeremiah, Lehi. He comes out of this kingdom down south, leaving Jerusalem, and that's just a handful. And there are others.
A couple that we could put up here: Amos, Hosea, very powerful prophets, but their focus was to the 10 northern tribes. And it's interesting how Lehi's message seems to be related to the messages we find in the northern kingdom. And it's fascinating that Lehi's ancestry comes from the north, and his message seems to resonate with the prophetic messages that northern prophets were giving the people on a regular basis, with the focus being, if ye keep my commandments, ye shall prosper in the land. That was a very common phrase up here in the north. And here's Lehi, who's now living in the tribe of Judah, but he himself is from a northern 10 tribe that his ancestors came down during when the Assyrians came to conquer. So really interesting things that will help us to see how the Book of Mormon connects to these biblical records.
Yeah, so let's watch the beginning of Jeroboam's reign as king. Turn over to chapter 12, verse 26. Jeroboam said in his heart, "Now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam king of Judah, and they shall kill me and go again to Rehoboam king of Judah." Notice what his motivation is. It's, I can't have the people going down to worship at the temple in Jerusalem, or they're going to then follow Rehoboam. I need them to follow me. It's about me having the power. I've got to turn them to me. So what does he do? He says, wherefore the king took counsel. Did you notice that? He took counsel. He's listening to people who are giving him a solution that isn't to turn them to God. It isn't about, I've got to serve them and I've got to decrease and God has to increase. It's about, no, I've got to turn them away from all of these things and turn them to me. So what does he do? He made 2 calves of gold, and he said, it's too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. So you have 2 places up north where the people can worship instead of having to go down into the kingdom of Judah to the temple. He says, just come and worship here in Bethel and in Tel Dan.
And then he does something that no king should ever do. He sets up this false worship, this false god, and he says in verse 28, "Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." Nothing could be more problematic and wicked than to lie to people about who has offered them salvation. If we go back and look at Exodus 19, and particularly Exodus 20, verse 1 and 2, God says, I am the one who saved you from Egyptian bondage. I was loyal to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that covenant I made with them to save you guys. And so now it's your job to be loyal to me. How can people be loyal to God if they don't know which God to worship? If a king is telling them the wrong God, and there really is only one, but essentially setting up a fake God, people cannot be loyal to a phantom, to a God that doesn't exist. And this is what Jeroboam has done, and this is the foundation of his kingdom in the north, and it's this act that no other king in Israel ever overthrew this false worship, never brought the people back into the fold to say, no, it's God himself who did this. And for 200 years, the people continued to worship these false gods And you have prophets like Elijah and Elisha saying, please come back. Jehovah is your God, and he will save you. And they just rejected again and again.